a couple more minutes. I know Rabbi Zwerin is going to be sharing with us a little bit, and others, as I mentioned, will be coming on. But normally at Lunch and Learn, we have our program, and either I'll be teaching it, and once in a while Rabbi Callman also teaches it. And we had a scheduled program, but who knew from yesterday, right? And all of a sudden the world changed. So let me sort of set into motion what we're going to be doing today, and I'll repeat it a couple of times as well. Because we're going to have a lot of people on, and also Dan is going to be leading us in some song, and I'll be sharing, Rabbi Zwerin will be sharing, and Rabbi Callman will be sharing. I think Reverend Jenny Schultz-Thomas will be sharing. We're going to keep everyone on mute for now. If people would like to share at some point a thought, we're going to request that you put it on the chat, and put it in the chat either to me or to anyone else, and so that we can see it, and then if possible to include it. But with all the balls in the air at the same time, it's pretty hard to have everyone unmuted at the same time, and just to control this a little bit. So again, I know that there'll be more coming on, and we're already to a full screen on mine. We had no way of anticipating what yesterday was going to entail. We knew there was going to be a vote, but who knew that it would devolve into the situation that we experienced. And I know that Susan and the boys and I were absolutely shocked. Many of us were at the temple, and we had programs, and we had to carry on with what we were doing at the same time, trying to monitor with one eye and ear what was going on in Washington. But it wasn't really fully until we were able to come home that we got the scope of what had happened. Some of you watched it immediately, and you would text me or Rabbi Callman, and you'd say, "Aren't you watching the news?" And I said, "Sorta." But whether you watch it from the very beginning or whether you just took it in when you could, we were all heartbroken, heartbroken for each other, heartbroken for our nation. And so this hour that we have, usually devoted to discussion and study, we thought we would devote it to an hour of some thought and prayer and songs for healing. One of the songs that we have every Shabbat and at healing services is the Mishaberach Refuah Shlema. It's a prayer that is quite meaningful to us. Usually I have a long list of names that we add, and we mention those names and think of how we can make a positive difference and act, whether it's a call or a visit or to bring over a kugel or some gesture to let them know that we're here for them and we care about them. But to express prayers for a nation, that's a grander enterprise. And for that, Dan Yolles is going to, again, we can't all sing it together, so we're muted. But Dan, if you'll unmute, and I know he has a screen share that he'll be able to bring up the words for everyone as we sing the song of healing for our nation.
Avotenu
Thank you, Dan. We saw the worst and the best of our nation yesterday. The worst, of course, was the violent riots by mobs who took over the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. that resulted in the deaths of at least 4 and scores of others injured, and shook the sense of well-being for our nation to the core. The best we experienced late last night, and I don't know how many of you stayed up until the very end, but Susan and Sam and Jacob and I all huddled together and watched it till the early hours. It was the proceedings of the House and the Senate. They were reassuringly formal and well-ordered, and for the most part, respectful. Vice President Pence, who is the president of the Senate, presided over a joint session of Congress. And it was to count the electors from each state, and they counted them alphabetically, naming each state in turn. And he asked them to present so that they could confirm that the electors were being presented with regular, informed, and authentic procedure. And he used that formula each time, that they are regular, informed, and authentic, and invited challenges. And there were some challenges. Early on, there was a challenge by those who challenged the electors from Arizona, and the House had to vote, and there was discussion and debate, and they voted. And later on, there was a 2-hour delay as there were challenges to Pennsylvania, and the joint session had to break apart and consider each in turn. And there wasn't a debate, rather they have a discussion where anyone who had a thought would be able to come up, and they were given 5 minutes to share. And that happened both in the Senate and it happened in the House. And it took some time. It took a couple of hours. That also pushed the proceedings to late into the night, early into the morning. But they did proceed, and the comments were bipartisan, respectful. There were a couple of impassioned moments, but they voted after hearing each other, and the vote was overwhelming. At 1:31 a.m. Mountain Time, as the votes for Vermont were counted, those 3 votes pushed President-elect Joe Biden over the threshold, and he then earned the right to become the next president of the United States of America. That's the best of this country. It was ordered, it was respectful, it was formal. There were impassioned pleas, there were opinions that were shared sometimes with great emotion. There was also a bipartisan expression of the regret and the condemnation of the violence, that which is the worst of this nation, that there were mobs of people who felt that through the force of their arms could storm our Capitol building and could intimidate our lawmakers into overturning an election that involved over 150 million Americans. The rule of law won over. The best of this country won over. But as Jews and those who were people of faith, we stepped back and we took notice of the parallels in history of times in which violent mobs, so infused with their own anger and sense of entitlement, felt that they could and should and would take over a government and intimidate lawmakers to bend it to their will. Well, they lost, but we all lost. And that's why we're here for this time of prayer. We saw the worst of our nation yesterday, and we also saw the best of our nation. And so we are here to pray for the welfare of our nation. We are here to side with those who are committed to respect, dialogue, and a peaceful resolution of disputes. We are here because our Jewish people, we have seen what happens when mobs storm the Capitol. and rough up to intimidate legislators. We are here because we have seen the worst of our nation and the best of our nation. And so we ask for God's help to bring out the best in each and every one of us, because it is through the best of each and every one of us that we can ensure that the best of our nation will shine forth. And with that, I'd like to ask for Rabbi Zwerin, if he is on, and to unmute and to share. I don't see him on my, yeah, Rabbi Zwerin, if you'll unmute.
I will unmute. Very nice introduction, Rabbi Rheins. It's yesterday was a sad day, not so much for what happened as for how it happened. We always think of the United States as being a country of can-do, a country of bright people who ultimately get it right. And yet yesterday, we saw dim-wittedness like we've rarely seen before. Because the whole idea of thinking that you can change a democracy by storming the Capitol smacked of 1932, 1933 in Germany. It was everything but people wearing brown shirts. Thinking that the way to change the will of the people is by forcing them into submission, and that just is so antithetical to what the United States stands for, that it was frighteningly appalling that so many people could be duped into doing such a totally dim-witted thing. The blame rests with one person, and I think everyone in this country today knows it. This past year has been a tough year for everybody. And sometimes when you're looking for advice, we usually turn to Jewish sources. And this is supposedly Lunch and Learn, so I thought maybe I'd share a few verses with you. One of which I suddenly came to understand for the very first time when I was looking at it last night. A couple of verses that are typical of our tradition and how it kind of puts 2020 into perspective. So the first verse I came across was from the book of Samuel. It says, Hannah prayed in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice could not be heard. And I thought, gee, this whole year we've spent doing Zoom conferences. And just 2 minutes ago, Rabbi Rheins asked me to unmute. So how many times have we talked into the microphone only after a few seconds realizing we're on mute and nobody can hear us, and we're talking away, and people are shouting, unmute, unmute, and finally it registers and you unmute. Well, to a certain extent, this year has taught us anew the idea and power of unmuting, of standing up and speaking out for what we know is right and what we know is just and what we know is wrong and what we know is unjust. This was a year of protest. This was a year of people marching. It was a year of people speaking out, of saying no more. We're not going to put up with this anymore. And so therefore, it was good, even in a year of Zoom where so many people were muted, to see so many people also unmuting themselves for the first time and speaking up and speaking out. The second verse I came across was, of course, one we've seen many times this year, I think, and that was the idea when Moses was coming down from the mountain. His face was glowing, and the people, he was going to give them the laws and the commandments, but the people looked at him and said, Moses, we can't look at you. Your face is glowing. And he put a veil over his face to protect the people from his glow. And so this was a year in which we, in most part, have learned to put a veil over our face to keep us from spreading the virus one to the other. And there was a third verse, which is from the book of Proverbs. And I was just reading Proverbs the other day, and I come across this strange verse that I never paid much attention to before. And here it comes at me, and it says, the locusts have no king, and yet they go forth and drive wedges everywhere. From Proverbs 30. Well, what were the locusts this year? The locusts were that virus that has no king, and yet managed, the smallest of things, managed to drive wedges everywhere between people. Those who don't want to wear masks, those who will wear masks, those who don't want to get a vaccine, those who will get a vaccine, those who don't want to separate 6 feet, those who do, those who won't mask meet, those who will. So it drove wedges everywhere, this tiny little locust of a virus. It has no king, and yet it ruled over a great number of us during this past year. And there are 8 or 10 more verses that I came up with, but one that I really wanted to share because I had never really understood it before. And every time I've read it, I've always thought, gee, this isn't even right. This is wrong. But the verse is from Exodus 20, and it says, I, the Eternal, visit the iniquities of the parents upon the 3rd and 4th generation of the children. I always thought, that's terrible. We don't really believe that that the next generation should suffer for the evil of the parents. And yet I suddenly understood it, that bigotry is an evil that's handed down from generation to generation. I never thought of it in those terms before. I was talking to Bishop Dermer, my co-chair on the Blacks and Jews United Committee, and we were schmoozing this morning about Martin Luther King Day and what he wants to do this year, a virtual program. So I'm going to meet with him. We're gonna video some stuff, but I thought, in this past year, I realized that Jim Crow laws have not only succeeded in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and into the 60s, and even after the civil rights movement, and even after the civil rights legislation that Johnson got to pass, the same bigotry, the same evil, the same anti-Semitism, the same racism, the same anti-genderism, the same anti-ageism, the same bigotry based on ignorance, on knowing nothing, on dim-wittedness, manages to fester and be fostered from one generation to the other. So I'm hoping that in this 2021, we can look at 2020 with hindsight. We thought we could look at it with foresight, and everything we thought we were going to see didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to be. So we're hoping that 2021 will give us a chance to look at 2020 with hindsight and learn some lessons from it, of how we as a nation can better operate with each other in building a better union for one another.
Amen.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to call upon Rabbi Jordy Callman in just a second. Just a reminder for everyone that if you would like to share a thought put it in the chat, and I'll be monitoring that, and I'll do my best to share your thought as well. And so with that, Rabbi Callman, would you like to unmute?
Yeah. As so many of us are going to study tonight about prayer and why we pray, I think one of the chief functions of prayer is to offer us comfort. It's a place to go where we aren't quite sure what else to do. It's a response. It's why after big moments. I mean, I remember after the shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, of all those little babies. Well, I went to temple, and I went and prayed because we didn't know quite else what to do. And prayer is a place to turn when you're in those moments, and when things are, the events happening in our country are so shocking and sad and scary. Prayer is a place to turn. And so I wanted to offer this afternoon, a prayer from the B'Kol Levavcha Siddur. It's a prayer for our country. God, who watches over all creation, give wisdom to those who are leaders among us. Inspire with creativity those who legislate. Provide compassion to those who make decisions affecting our lives. Educate them in the ways of justice that are the visions of the Hebrew prophets. May they never be far from mercy and understanding, fairness and equity. We ask for cooperation between people of different races and religions, and understanding between those who are gay and those who are straight. Restore love to our families who are separated for whatever reason. May we have the courage to speak out against bigotry at all times, against hatred that is racial, religious, or sexual. May the young profit from the experience of their elders and also share with them the idealism of their youth. May we all work towards a common goal, the improvement of humanity. God, who created our beautiful and beloved country, preserve its beauty. Protect your creations from selfishness, abuse, and destruction. Provide wisdom to all who dwell here and teach us to be strong. Give us the ability to work with other nations for a better world and maintain our good lives in harmony and in love. With wise leadership that fosters cooperation rather than war. Protect us with Sukkot Shlomecha, your shelter of peace, and let us say Amen.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Callman. Again, an invitation for those who would like to share a few thoughts. At the end of the gathering that we have this afternoon, Dan is going to share and lead us, but he's going to be the one who's singing, because we're going to be muted, because we've discovered one of the terrible things that we've heard is when 50 people are singing on Zoom at different times and pitches and all the rest. But it's lovely, and it's a lovely chaos. But we're going to let Dan lead us in a song, Olam Chesed Yebaneh, that we can build a world with kindness and love. But again, I wanted to give this forum one of the things that we treasure most in our learning together is the opportunity to share, that each person, each one of you have experiences and thoughts, fears and concerns. And where do you get to share them? In a safe and secure and knowledgeable and caring environment? Well, you share them here. And so just put it into a chat or let me know that you'd like to share. Every day, both morning, noon, and night, there is a prayer of peace, Birkat Shalom. There's also a prayer for government of the Shoftei. God, let it be that the rulers will be filled with your ruach, a sense of your spirit, so that they will bring out their best as they govern and they lead us. There's a prayer at the conclusion of the Sim Shalom, the Shabbat morning prayer for peace, where it says, grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. We noticed one of the shocking expressions from Europe and from the Middle East, around the world. They look to us as the bastion of security, the torchbearer of democracy, and they saw that image shaken. We need to renew that. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of our world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvorech et amo Yisrael, b'shalom. I want to go down and see if there was someone else who wished to share. I think we're all very stunned, but I wanted to go ahead and start to conclude with one little address, and that is that I know that Stephanie and Margie and we all feel a sense of helplessness. How can I make a difference when it's just my voice? And Angie, I think you're speaking to that a little bit as well. But it's not just the power of a single person praying or a single person expressing his or her hopes. It is when one joins another. You know, when we gather for prayer, it's a minyan. We have a critical mass, and we are not powerless. We are certainly not helpless. We are very able to role model the behavior that is exemplary, that is the best, that unites, that doesn't point the finger. It's not to say, you know what, where we believe and who we hope to support those are the good guys. And the people who voted for the other man, well, they're the bad guys. Well, that's not going to be part of the healing process. That's going to be a part of the exacerbating, pushing this issue even further down the road. And one of the most encouraging things that I heard from President-elect Joe Biden, and another 2 weeks, we don't have to say elect anymore, was a sincere expression of bipartisanship. Now, you heard that when Mitch McConnell spoke about Joe Biden. They have decades of friendship. And it shocks us because McConnell, from some perspectives, says he's one of them. He's one of the bad guys. Well, he's not a bad guy. He just has a different opinion. Joe Biden doesn't think he's a bad guy. He thinks he's wrong a lot. But President-elect Biden was able to share and to speak of one nation for all under God with liberty. Reverend Jenny Schultz Thomas, just back from the doctor's office. I'm so glad. Those who do not know Reverend Jenny, she is the pastor at First Plymouth United Church of Christ. That's right down the road at Hamden, and the host of Temple Sinai's earliest days with Rabbi Zwerin there. And Reverend Jenny, just delighted that you were able to be with us and to share some of your thoughts. I'm going to unmute you. If you maybe have to click something as well. There you go.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be with you. Sorry, I'm late to the meeting. Are we just kind of sharing thoughts or having prayers, or what would you like?
How about share a thought and a prayer?
Sure. A thought. So I have missed all of your thoughts. I would love to hear them. I think I know that we are of one mind, one body, one spirit with your community of faith. For many years, we have longed to be together more often than we are able to, but it's great to join you today. As many of you today, I have felt like we are pilgrims more so than we do traditionally. Yesterday, during the Christian tradition, we celebrated Epiphany, and we weren't together, of course. So that Epiphany was celebrated as we are now, isolated in our homes, apart from each other. But during the events yesterday, I was thinking about sermonizing, which probably rabbis and pastors do way too often. But as I was thinking about these wise astrologers, this great legend, this great story of these pilgrim travelers who are journeying to seek wisdom and enlightenment, to kind of speak a new way. And they were really resisting. They were resisting empire. And I think that we, in this day and age, are continually resisting the forces and powers that go against love. So for me, as I think about our response, our collective response, it's really about seeking not unity. I hate to say that, but I think we seek unity out of a fragile place of misunderstanding what it is to be together. I think if we're together in spirit, we're unified, but many of us are not together in spirit, as we have seen over the last several years and more decades. In this country, we have never been unified. As a people of God, we have never been unified. I think we all have the seed of the soul, and we are all fashioned and formed from a knowledge and a wisdom and a love that is beyond us, that we don't understand. And when we get into trouble, it's because we think we understand. So I do know that love is at the heart and is the seed of every soul. And so if there is unity, it can only be found in our acts of unity, maybe not of thought or of mind, but when we act together, when we share love, when we serve one another, when we serve the homeless, when we decide to stand together peacefully in silence, in meditation, when we lend our souls to something greater than ourselves, when we don't speak, but when we hold sacred space. I think that is when we are most together and most unified. So as we are all dismayed and probably all a little bit, I don't know, angry and upset and fearful and all the things, I know that I am, I call upon the God who hems us in on all sides, before and behind, and who has given us a seed of solidarity, a seed of hope, a seed of grace, a seed of forgiveness. I'm not necessarily in the seat of forgiveness right now, but I'm working on it. I think that we are ever called to use our bodies in a way that brings us to a place of forgiveness and reconciliation. So as you all know, and as you've probably discussed, there are no, even on this screen, like all of my screens, there aren't many persons of color who are with us on our journey. And we live in Colorado. It's not the most diverse state, but we are a people, a nation who hasn't always welcomed a stranger. And we say stranger because whiteness and privilege has always been the beacon of our hope and our own God. So one of the things I challenge myself to and our community to is, as we're thinking about unity, as we're thinking about love and coming together, let us think about what it is to see one another for the souls that we are, and not for the shells, that hold our space, our sacred worth, but also to see the individual uniqueness and beauty of each shell, of each beautiful hue, black, brown, just like Jesus. I think we forget that we have to articulate that. It's not just progressives or those who call ourselves more forward thinking or more enlightened when it comes to things of faith or love or forgiveness or any of those things. We forget to speak our truth and to say that every human is fashioned in God's image, and that black and brown and red and Native American, indigenous, women, transgender, lesbian, gay. I think we have to speak those truths and not just imagine that those around the table also hold those same values. Every black and brown person, every person of color right now needs to know that they are not safe, but that we hold them and protect them and are advocating and are fighting for them. So that is me, the UCC pastor. That's my place of advocacy. That's the heart and soul of who I am as a pastor. But more than that, it's I think God is calling us to love in a more intimate, more articulate, more distinctive way than maybe we have before. And so beyond unity, it is using the words of particularity to say to you, a friend of mine, you neighbor of mine, you are wonderful and I love you because of these things. You stand above and you are special because of these things, not just because God said love one another, because we all throw those things around like thoughts and prayers, but because you are fashioned and formed by the grace and beauty of God, because you glow, because you are double kissed by the sun. So thank you. Those are some of my thoughts, and I am praying with you, fearing with you, but finding hope with you.
Reverend Jenny, thank you so much. Those are inspiring words. And indeed, I think we all struggle with the fact that we rely on sentiment, on that which is spoken. We have in our tradition and speak daily of the fact that we are created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. But we speak it and we express it. We don't always act on it. And that's going to be our challenge, to act on those words which we hold precious and sacred, and turn those words into things that are real and felt in this world that we are struggling to heal. There's a prayer that I want to conclude with that Dan Yolles is going to lead us in, and we're all going to be muted for that. And so I know Alan Wetz had mentioned that as a military man, as a veteran, that he had a special prayer also, thinking of all the men and women who put their lives on the line for the security of our country. And Alan, thank you for that sentiment. So the song that Dan is going to share with us is Olam Chesed Yebaneh, that we can build, not just speak about, that we can build a world of love and kindness. So Dan, I don't know if you have those words on the share with us. Thank you.
Olam chesed yibaneh, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. 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 I will build this world from love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And you must build this world from love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. And if we build this world from love, yadadai, 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 then God will build this world from love. Yadadai, yadadai, yadadai.
As we come out of the screen, Dan, thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to, again, on behalf of all, express our deep appreciation, Rabbi Ray Zwerin, of course, the founder of Temple Sinai, Reverend Jenny Schultz Thomas, the pastor at First Plymouth, Rabbi Jordy Callman and Dan Yolles, Rabbi Susan Rheins, and a bunch of Rheinsies from all over. Listen, we feel very separate and alone today. And especially yesterday, we were feeling separate and alone and vulnerable, but we're not separate and alone. We have each other. We can see each other here. We can hear that hope expressed in prayer and in song and in sentiment, in that sweet smile that each of you have. Share that smile, share that hope. Know that God shines hope to each and every one of us, linking us regardless of race, of faith, of ethnic background, of nationality. God said, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ye'er Adonai panav alecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom. God said, share these words so that everyone knows that I am with them. Say to them that God will bless and protect you. May God shine the grace of the divine upon you so that you are filled with grace and you are able to share grace. And may God grant you, your loved one, this nation and this world, the blessing of peace. Amen. Be well.